Thank you, Steph. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this session on civil societies as a force for stability and progress in an increasingly turbulent world. Up next in the Global Town Hall 2025 is our third session titled How to Make the AI Revolution Work for All, a North-South Debate. We begin in a few minutes. Please stay with us.
Because technology is ubiquitous.
Because technology is what connects us.
And humanity is resilient.
Wanting the best for everyone on the planet.
We can tackle problems, fast evolving problems, like never before.
Global Citizen has worked to connect those in the corridors of power and some of the biggest artists and entertainers to everyday citizens, so that when disaster strikes, we could swing into action immediately. And that rapid and coordinated response is what makes our model so impactful.
The Nature Conservancy is a global nonprofit focused on conserving lands and water on which all life depends. And the data we collect helps us understand what choices we need to make to save our planet.
With a movement of millions of people, we needed technology and systems and infrastructure. That is the means through which we can tell stories that help people see their connection to fellow global citizens all around the world.
Protecting biodiversity and combating climate change are systemic problems, and technology, data, cloud, generative AI, machine learning, these are tools to help us really understand what's going on.
And Amazon Web Services has been the backbone of the infrastructure that powers our movement.
Amazon Web Services brings that power of scale, security, transferability to the teams doing different but similar work.
It not only serves as the hosting platform for our website and for our app, it's also Amazon services that provides insights that we can use to make better campaigns that citizens can then use to take action to drive real change.
Technology for conservation is about the people, the places, and the priorities.
And we need a technology provider who can be there with us.
When you have speed on your side, you realize that we're all in this together.
And then we see that the actions that we take, while they might seem small on an individual level, when we add them up, they can quite literally move the world.
So leveraging these technologies for good, that is a unifying force.
If we're not careful, it's going to end up concentrated in a few hands.
I think Africa is not yet ready to embrace AI. The use of AI will only be in a few hands of the people who have access to these resources.
The benefits may disproportionately accrue to the global north countries and companies.
Important that the people who are most impacted, the end users, the consumers, the man in the street, are aware and can use AI in the right way.
This whole system would have to come from the government, the industry, and also the society.
We want to make sure that we avoid concentration of power in just a few hands, a few companies, or a few countries.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The third Global Town Hall session is on how to make the AI revolution work for all, a North-South debate. The session will be moderated by Andrew Teo, founder of Blue Bolt Labs. Andre, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you to the FPCI and Global Citizen for organizing this Global Town Hall. Now, today we are going to speak on a topic which is quite close to my heart, which is, in fact, inclusive AI. So in recent years, we've seen AI rapidly transforming almost every single aspect of human life, from healthcare to education, to agriculture, infrastructure, governance, industries, and so on. We've seen the global north, mainly the United States, Western Europe, continue to build in infrastructure, research, and capacity. And on the flip side, we see countries here in the global south that face systemic barriers and are often left out of the discourse of this governance. So it goes from issues such as infrastructure all the way to data protection. And this raises a serious question. Are we really building AI for everyone or only for the few? Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andre, and I will be your moderator for today. I'm the founder of VBooks Labs, where we design inclusive AI solutions for corporates and governments all across the Asia Pacific. Now, on the topic here, we will be addressing 4 main questions. Number 1, who is currently setting the agenda for AI development? And how do you make sure that no one is left behind here? Is it the West? Is it the East? Is it the North or the South? Number 2, how can we really ensure that this AI revolution that we see right now really serve the public good? You've seen the waves of revolution go past. The agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the information revolution, and now the AI revolution coming into. Third question that we should be addressing is how we're able to have a more equitable access of AI within the global south. How can we make sure that everyone actually benefits from it? And the fourth one, of course, which I feel could be quite ambiguous in some cases, is that who decides what counts as ethical, fair, responsible AI? With global organizations such as the UN currently promoting this, but are they really? So here we are today to really debate the arguments from speakers from both sides, from the global north and the global south, where we'll explore how this AI revolution can be made to serve all of humanity beyond the few. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our 4 session panelists that we have here. The first one is Dr. Mary Yost, currently Ambassador for Digital Affairs of Estonia, and also team lead of the Knowledge Hub Digital of the European Commission. We'll have our second panelist, which is Professor Dr. Forda Alkizani, who leads strategic economic, technology, and investment, and also national expert on advanced science and future economy from the United Arab Emirates. The third speaker, of course, is that you have Edward Tsoi, who is also the co-founder of AI Safety Asia. And joining us later, of course, we have David Guan, who is also the Senior Vice President and CFO of iFlyTech, which is a public listed company listed on the Shenzhen Stock Exchange. So he'll be providing some views about how corporates see AI inclusivity. Now, let me just walk you through the format of today's session. So we'll start off with a rapid Q&A from each of our 3 panelists. We'll go first round mainly on inclusivity and accessibility. Then we'll go into a second round where we'll cover more about infrastructure and regulations. And of course, the third segment of that, we'll have some discussions from our esteemed discussants who are on here today. And of course, we'll have David coming in to also present his point of view. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you could all sit up in your seats upright wherever you are in the evening, at night, in the morning, or in the afternoon, and let us start hearing the differing in some kind of argumentative point of view from our panelists over here. Great. So I'd like to get started. With Dr. Nelgas. All right. So we see more and more countries appointing tech ambassadors, envoys, even ministers, as we've seen in Denmark, UAE, Brazil, and even your home country, Estonia. how would the future of AI diplomacy look? And what do countries really need to be on their feet when facing this rapid AI revolution? For us, the first was.
Yeah, hello. Good morning from my cozy home in Tallinn, in Estonia, this Saturday morning, and thank you for inviting. It's a pleasure to be here and among with so many different people that I'm looking forward to hearing from. But before maybe answering to your question, I would maybe take a step back and really for us to understand what is the context, the current global context we are living in, and then I will maybe go to some of the concrete examples of how it actually influences how our states and also private sector run. So I come from Estonia, as I said. I hope most of you know, but those who do not know, it's a very small country of 1.4 million in the north of Europe, and we are known to be tech savvy. So I can say that digital put Estonia in the world map. We are one of the leaders in government digitalization. My government is open, modern, and I can really say that Estonia is I would say, a much needed reminder in these current days of all the positives that technology can bring, because let's face it, we are starting to forget it among all the other issues that technologies also bring. So I'm really proud that Estonia does demonstrate all the positives of technology in a way that technology can also be used for something good, and what we would maybe say here, in a way that is also trusted and protecting people from all those bad things that can accompany. But when I look now Estonia and what is happening globally, I would say that it is increasingly difficult for all the countries, or almost all the countries, to keep up with these technological developments. In the opening, you mentioned that it's east-west or north-south divide. I would not, in a way, agree with this, even though these divides do exist. But when we look at, let's say, tech diplomacy or digital diplomacy or AI diplomacy, it is really the divide between two, I would say, countries, perhaps more, but basically two, and the rest. And I would also say that it is really a divide between a very few tech companies and then the rest. So in this world, the question actually is, for all the other countries, how do we plan our digitalization from connectivity to the use of it, so that, first of all, we have the needed capacity and skills to keep up with these technologies and really to make use of these technologies. And I am talking this from Estonian side because Estonia has not been a birthplace of technological innovations. Of course, we have Skype, we have a lot of startups from Bolt to Wise and so forth. But mainly what we are really known is for the very wise and smart use of these technologies for the benefit of my country and our people. So first, I would say that this is increasingly difficult. And the second, of course, for the rest of us, it really means how we can plan everything our country does, from the cables coming in, from the satellite connectivity, to how we are even using office software to make sure that we are not dependent on just one or the other player. So I would say that for us, it really, the tech diplomacy really means, on the one hand, innovation partnerships, and on the other hand, resilience partnerships. Because we see increasingly examples around the globe where countries are dependent, perhaps not just one country, not just one company, but even one individual person. And the consequences of this can be really harmful to all our societies. So I think I'm coming to an end of my first intervention. So what has happened as a result of this, as you said, technology is no longer the issue for, tech savvy people, or, the guys with a ponytail, or it's not an issue for lawyers as it used to be. It is actually a matter of every and each diplomat. So yes, we see the emergence of tech diplomacy. I was Estonia's digital ambassador for almost 5 years. We had a digital and cyber diplomacy department. We had people working there. It was our task to make sure that digital is part of every diplomat's job. So I would say that this is where the future is also going. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. We'll have so much more to talk to after this. Now, I'd like to just quickly move over to Professor Dr. Alkanazi, who represents the UAE, which is also one of the most impressive countries in terms of AI diplomacy, as well as projects going on over there. So, Dr. Alkanazi, same questions for you. We see a lot more countries appointing these tech envoys and ministers and so on. How would the future of AI diplomacy look for you, spoken, say, from a Middle Eastern point of view?
Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening and good morning for whoever connecting from different time zones. I'd like by saying thank you, starting by saying thank you to the foreign policy community of Indonesia and for as well collaborating partners across the globe for bringing this conversation of who leads the future, who will lead it towards what kind of civilization, and placing it strategically around the theme of future we lead. This reminds us that the age of that we live in or at around artificial intelligence is not just about predicting machines, but it's about governing the meaning of impact that we put across the table when we are engineering it. When we talk about AI diplomacy, we are not talking about treaties. We are talking about governance of over 200 emerging technologies that are being developed on the AI stack. AI is today is a foundational asset and resource of intelligence, and it's considered as an economic, ethical, and environmental infrastructure across the globe. We already have an engine for the next industrial order, regardless of what other conversations that exist around the table. And I agree with Nelly, it's not the conversation around polarizing West and South, but it's a conversation that we should mindfully place it around bringing the whole of society and the whole of governance together on the table. We've heard from the big companies, the big consulting companies, that by 2030 we're standing on a GDP contribution of over 15 to 20 trillions, and it's a bubble that keeps on being expanded and being shrunk around the world. But that doesn't dispute the fact that the numbers we are hearing is a combined economies of India, China today. But the map of wealth is deeply uneven. When we see the compute power around the world, 70% of it is concentrated into 3 blocks of the world, mostly in a global north, while a global south is responsible of training those sets. 60% of global data resides on a global south, and we control less than 10% of the compute infrastructure that is needed to process this. This is not merely a technological gap or innovational gap. It's actually an emergence of a deep, I would say, emerging industries dependencies in a world with data flows from the south to the north. And when it comes to diplomacy, as you asked, Andre, we must evolve from managing borders to managing those bandwidth to being able to build this kind of geo-intelligence and the associated blocks of infrastructure and the stack that exists around it. And I think it would call us to focus on maybe 3 different pathways of analysis when we are talking about AI diplomacy today. AI diplomacy today is about infrastructural sovereignty. The first task is to understand what are the sovereign assets or ecosystem that we need to build beyond federated compute structures, beyond what we're seeing at the moment around energy, minerals, and the new frontiers of technology, as well understanding the deep responsibility that comes with, I think, disrupting the current technological evolution cycle. We've heard today in 2024 from MIT Sloan, a stark reminder is that data centers around the world consume consume over 1% to 1.5% of global electricity, and it generates 0.6% of global emissions, which is absolutely something equal to 50,000 homes per data, heating 50,000 homes per data centers that exist each year. We are standing on a technological evolution that might lead to electronic waste, that might lead as well to huge
Dr.
level of
Jada,
conversational
thank you.
disruption.
Thank you for that point of view. So we'll also be covering a very important topic on government regulations in terms of AI in our follow-up session here as well. Yeah. But now I'd just like to just quickly go over to Edward. So our first few speakers have talked about how this is not a battle between the global north and the global south, but more about those who have and those who do not have. Now, for you yourself, how worrying is this philosophy, this aspect? And what would it take to really make AI work for all beyond what we currently see?
Yeah, thank you, FPCI, and also the organizer for having AI Safety Asia to be involved in this conversation. It's great to follow Dr. Holder as well, who's also one of our advisors, which we are very grateful to. I think AI Safety Asia as a nonprofit, we're sitting in a very interesting position. I mean, on one hand, I'm based in London and I do go to Asia once a quarter. And right now we're working with the UK AI Security Institute to contribute to their latest international scientific reports on AI safety, chaired by Joshua Bengio. They'll be publishing their next reports during the India AI Impact Summit. The reports will largely focus on frontier risks. So these are some of the concerns that are quite focal about, especially in the global north context. But on the other hand, we just got back from Indonesia 2 months ago as we were supporting the Digital Ministry, ComDG, on their first ever AI governance capacity building for their senior directors. So right now we're kind of sitting in between these kind of global north and south divide. But I think underneath these questions, there are a few assumptions if I can take a step back. So I think number one, when we talk about AI revolution, many of the audience here will probably know, but AI has been around for a long time, and we have been using AI in many aspects of our daily life as well. I mean, even if you're using social media or Gmail or any other sort of tools, we have been using AI for a long time. Yes, there are a lot of progress, especially in the Gen AI era and with the large language model. But I think it's also very important to recognize that AI has been around for many years. And then the number two is, I think there's also an urge, no matter for different governments around the world and also for different companies, to try to put chatbots into everything. I think a very important thing for us to think about is, do we actually need to put LLM or AI into every single thing? In many scenarios, the answer might be no. And then the number three is, right now, the market is placing a lot of bets in large language model, especially general purpose large language model. I think the verdict is still pretty much out in terms of whether that's the ultimate solution, whether we actually need large language model for everything. Are we able to use small model for some of the purpose? For example, do we actually need general purpose model for everything? Or we can actually deploy some of the narrow scope fine-tuned model for some of the other purpose. So I think there's a lot of presumption that I don't want to jump to the conclusion too fast. And then also another aspect underlying this question is the whole notion of sovereign AI, right? Which is the buzzword in the market. But that is a very loose definition in terms of that term. If you hear that from Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, basically the pitch is about buying more NVIDIA chips. And if you hear that from Sam Altman from OpenAI, basically they're trying to convince country to put in a lump sum of money to build another Stargate, similar to what they've done in Norway. But then I was in another talk just now offered by the UK CTO for the AI Security Institute, Jade Leung. She's also the new advisor to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. I think the interesting thing when the UK look at this question is to focus on the term access. The way that they define whether they have sovereignty into different stack is to decide whether they have access to that different stack. And we're also seeing different countries, for example, Switzerland, trying their efforts to try to come up with some of their open source model, like the Apaches. But that kind of north-south framing, as mentioned by previous speakers, might not be the most accurate. And we also need to think about some of the other alternatives going beyond the US and Chinese tech stack. And then the last thing that I'll add is, in order for us to think about all these very important questions, it's super important no matter whether you're talking about the government officials or civil society or academic researcher, it's very important to bring everyone up to certain baseline so that we can have a meaningful dialogue, not just to be at the table, to have a seat at the table, but also have that baseline understanding to have a meaningful dialogue about these very important questions.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for your point of view, Edward. So just to sum up the first round of questions that we have here, I think what we have discovered that it's not really about North versus South, but it's more about US versus China versus the rest. It's about who is the resource, who doesn't have that resource. People have been using AI for the longest time, but we really need AI though. So with this, I'd like to just bring on Edward once again to talk about the big subject of AI safety itself, right? Since you're an expert in this, I'd like to know what are your point of views on the regulatory or governance measures that we need to ensure that these AI technologies are applied ethically and safely? How do we make it work for all?
Yeah, just to follow up on my last point in my last answer, it's super important to bring the multi-stakeholder to a certain baseline of understanding. So that's why at AI Safety Asia, we train senior government official at Digital Ministry. We also train the MPs. So we have a training coming up in 2 weeks, training about 100 to 150 MPs in collaboration with the Commonwealth Parliamentarian Association. We also support CSO, no matter whether they're working on different issues, human rights, digital rights, or other issues. It's very important for them to understand some of the basic questions. How does AI work from a simple technical angle? What are some of these potential benefits and risks of AI? And what are some of these governance options that they can consider when thinking about these kind of questions? And then the number two thing is, instead of jumping in and try to think about, oh, the EU have the AI Act, what should we do? Should we think about an overarching AI regulation for our country? Usually what we'll recommend is maybe you should take a step back to try to review your existing governance structure. For example, in terms of your regulation, are there things within your existing legislation or regulation that you can utilize to try to cover some of these potential loophole or blind spots in terms of these emerging technologies? If in the case of there are actually some blind spot or loophole that are not covered by existing regulation, then you can think about how to come up with new instruments to fill out those holes. But then the conversation should also go beyond just regulation or legislation, right? There are different stacks within that governance structure. So there's things like what academics like Gillian Hatfield from Johns Hopkins mentioned, the normative infrastructure structure. So how do we also think about things like standard, like the ISO standard, the IEEE standard, ethics framework, industry voluntary commitments, but also things that are able to help private sector and also public sector to better comply with some of these expectations and also regulation as well. So for example, if you look at the Singapore, they have something called the AI Welfare Foundation, trying to build the ecosystem around AI assurance, AI auditing, so that if there's a willingness or if there's intention from the private sector, there are commercially available solutions to help them to improve in terms of governance, in terms of safety, and there are measurable ways for them to conduct this kind of auditing to understand the potential impact of these emerging technologies. And that's also why 2 months ago, we worked with Brookings Institution to publish our report looking at Southeast Asia AI governance as well, to try to understand that trend in terms of how different countries, even within Southeast Asia, are thinking about.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that, Edward. Now, I want to go over to Dr. Altazani here right now. So the Middle East has not been known to be the first in terms of, say, AI regulations or government fit. What the Middle East does well is that it takes the best part from the US, from China, from the EU, or even Singapore, who are the pioneers of these, to come together, right? So I'd also like to hear from your point of view, Professor Yo, what sort of regulatory or governance measures do you need to ensure that AI technologies are applied ethically, spoken from the Middle Eastern point of view?
I think, Andre, the conversation around ethics has been there for a very, very long time. And in order for today, for us to be able to weave in a solution, we have to start by considering ethical conversations around AI as part of the DNA of building the new technologies of AI. We cannot anymore race to market and present these kind of new AI models into market that are great in solving functional asks, but not really great in addressing biases, privacy concerns, and whatnot. Because regulating AI today for us is a huge necessity. It's not anymore the conversation about governing the consequences, but also about or putting brakes to progress. It's actually the engine of legitimacy. We are seeing the awareness around using this kind of AI models or artificial intelligence in general is being on the high, where users don't want to use anything that affects their circle of trust. And the circle of trust here, it should start with a national accountability, a regional accountability, and then as well a global level stewardship of the different ethical components. We have over 200 ethical policies and responsible policies that have been developed globally since the 2020. Each nation, however, must treat AI today as a critical infrastructure. And if you do that, then it means that we have to consider training frontier model that doesn't just consume energy, but also provide a meaningful I would say governance structures across different platform, and as well brings the fragmentation that exists in between governance structures together. We know today that regulatory divergence across different nations is costing 1.2 trillion USDs as per Boston Consultancy Group kind of report, providing interoperability and regional compact to this through the different AI charters that are being developed either in Africa or ASEAN or within the GCC is quite really important in making sure that responsibility is the number one currency that exists in the system. And when I say responsibility here, I mean also having these kind of global conversations on polycentric governance constellations that should exist on the ITU and the UNESCO and the OECD, but also a higher frontier on this within the work that happens on the NGO infrastructures as well when it comes to addressing ethical responsibility as part of resilience infrastructure. And finally, I think without equity on infrastructure, making sure that equal access to knowledge, equal access to compute and infrastructure, equal access as well to models that are morally correct is quite very important.
Perfect. Thank you, Doctor. Now let's move over to Dr. Les. Right. So we have talked a lot on the policy side on AI safety and so on. But I'd also like to know your point of view in terms of the kind of partnerships that countries could best support developing AI across industries. So it'd be great if you could share some case study examples on that as well.
Yes, thank you. I actually thought of bringing maybe 4 concrete examples. I think the first one is how we digitalize and how we see digitalization of our government and society. So usually governments do the developments alone, regardless of being actually facing quite similar problems and issues around the globe. So, for example, Estonia has since 2000 implemented an interoperability platform. I think also my previous speaker was mentioning of the importance for all the governments. So since 2016, we realized, we actually don't have to develop it alone. We can develop it together with our neighbors and our friends. So since 2016, we share both human resources, but also financial cost together with Finland and Iceland in developing our interoperability platform. That is one of the, I would say, base components for our digitalization. So I would see a more mind shift needed here, not to try to do everything alone, but share, especially the very scarce human resources we have. The second one is really, I would say that it's not that much even government to government partnership, even though my previous one was example of this, but it's increasingly the partnership with private tech companies. And yes, the big ones are there, but we cannot avoid them. We need to collaborate with them in order to be using the latest of tech and being on top of it. But I think what is the key here is how we build these partnerships to build our local tech company and our local tech competencies. And this is not an issue only of the countries that have no money. This is also an issue of the countries that actually have a lot of money, that have become quite dependent on these technology companies that provide us with all the needed and good technologies. So I would say the second one is to build really our own tech capacity. And I think Estonia has working on this very, I would say, deliberately for the past 30 years. The third one is really how we build our tech to be sovereign. For example, you mentioned AI, how we disperse our compute power. We do not have to have also everything alone. For example, Estonia collaborates quite a bit with Finland. We learn from them. We learn from also other places to make sure we are not dependent on one player only. And it also comes to how, for example, we keep our data. We, as you may know, Estonia has data embassies project. So we keep some of our data, our critical data in the territory of another country. So not just a private sector player. And fourth, and I know I'm coming to the end, is the governance. I would say that the issues we are dealing are so complex that one country alone cannot manage here. So I see here really an approach more towards regional partnerships. Of course, I come from Europe, so I bring European Union as an example how we tackle some of the issues around big tech and AI and privacy and security. But I see these regional approaches also emerging all over the globe. So from national to regional, I would say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ross. So for the second round here, we've heard from the point of view in terms of sovereign AI, we've heard about AI safety. Of course, we've heard about how is it that we're able to have partnerships between countries. But at the end of the day, resources would have to be shared if we want to progress together. Now, going on to the third segment of this session here, we'll be going into the discussions whereby I'll be inviting three discussants at a time to present their point of views or their questions. And then we'll pose it over to the panelists to address them, two out of three panelists to address them. All right. So in this case here, I would like to invite, so in order, Robert Salomon, co-founder of AI Eswatini. Discussion number 2, we have Soledad Magnan, director of Jakarta Initiative. And discussion number 3, Valentin Goddard, executive director of the AI Impact Alliance. All right. So let's start off with Robert. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. So listening to the panelists that spoke earlier, I would like to offer a perspective from Africa, particularly as someone who is an AI practitioner by profession and as someone also engaged in policy. So I am a co-founder for AI Eswatini. So across the continent, we recognize the transformative potential of AI. Yet we also see a serious risk emerging because Africa's voice is still largely missing in the formation of global AI standards, ethics, and governance frameworks. Right. So today, most of the rules, infrastructure, and research shaping the global AI come from the global north. And without intentional and inclusion, this imbalance risks deepening dependency, constraining our policy space, and limiting our long-term digital sovereignty as Africa. So this is not because Africa lacks interest or ambition. In fact, Africa is ready. And I mean it, Africa is ready. We are a home to young and innovative population, growing tech ecosystem, and a new wave of private players and civil society organizations, such as Cassava Technologies, that is bringing AI compute to the African continent, such as Zinde Africa, that is developing the AI talent in Africa, and AI Eswatini, that is also bringing and building AI solutions for the Eswatini context. right? So there are many other players who are advancing talent development, supporting research, providing access to technology, and promoting responsible AI practices. These actors are building capacity where governments often lack or face constraints. So what does this mean? Readiness alone is not enough. What we lack in Africa are the structural enablers that include affordable compute and data infrastructure, interoperable digital systems, sustainable funding, and diplomatic capacity that is required to participate meaningfully in the global negotiations, right? So this capacity gap becomes even more visible when we consider the fragmentation between national AI strategies as well as the African Union's continental AI strategy. Some member states are developing national frameworks that do not align with the AU's vision. This does not necessarily reflect disagreement, but
Robert,
rather
thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, we're just gonna stop you right here because we do have other discussion coming on as well. But I do get your point about how African needs structural enablers here, right? So for the second one, I'd like to invite our second discussion on board. Soldat Manga, floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. And thank you, FPCI and Global Town Hall, for this kind invitation to contribute to this timely panel with some food for thought about during these very intense times. And as it has been mentioned, AI is built upon information and natural resources to train machines about humans and the world. And this is currently extensively used to monitor, analyze, predict, and control behaviors. How is AI shaping Latin America? Latin America is the most unequal region in the world. And while we hold some of the richest natural resources, poverty prevails among women, LGBTQI, Afro-Indigenous children, and youth. And because of the invisible hand of the market, these groups have been consistently invisibilized, underpaid, exploited, attacked, and criminalized. And digital technologies are the cause and consequences of these social inequalities. These AI-based thinking machines are ever more exploiting resources, behaving autonomously, and encoding biased information, which deeply affect Latin American realities and possibilities. And how is AI changing global affairs related to global North and global South inequalities? Well, AI depends on these natural resources, on the labor and the knowledge and the data and users from groups traditionally overlooked that represent the global majority. And this is beyond geographical binarisms. And there is a strong division of learning that Shoshana Zuboff has described, which reinforces these global social hierarchies globally. This regards asking ourselves, who knows, who decides in building the digital superhighway. This division has been rooted in defining AI as complex to understand, to regulate, as something that is foreign. This has resulted in delegating and blackboxing decisions in the interest of few rich corporations and governments. And nevertheless, these decisions have significantly impacted climate change, gender violence, anti-immigration hate speech, racist labor exploitation, colonial electoral corruption, and more. So how can we promote an effective international AI with multi-stakeholder governance for inclusion and equity? This governance needs to have a more meaningful and authentic representation of the global majority across geographies. Such representation should be fostered through the right to a quality education in the digital age, an education for open and honest dialogue, for academic freedom, to hold accountable and inquire the privilege and the uses of AI, and for participation, building an inclusive AI for diverse standpoints. Where are we learning about AI? What should we be learning about with and about AI? What AI education promotes the dignity and lifelong development of the global majority? We encourage everyone to continuously pursue this quest together. Thank you.
Andre, we didn't hear you. Are mute, I think.
Yes.
So okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Soledad. Thank you for your point of view from Latin America. Now let's just go over to Valentin Goddard just to share also your perspective.
Thank you so much. Thank you for organizing. Thank you for having me. And thank you to the speakers for their amazing insights. I was very happy to hear all those different point of views regarding the real meaning of data sovereignty and our capacity of adopting AI responsibly. I want to just very briefly introduce myself. My name is Valentine Goddard, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm also an artist, and I've been working in AI ethics, AI policy since 2017. I founded AI Impact Alliance. It's a nonprofit organization that's based in Canada. The goal is to study the different implications of AI, ethical, legal, economic, cultural, political, and it has developed over the years an extensive experience in art-based engagement, AI literacy, and AI policy innovation, where art is used to engage civil society organizations. So I've heard that a lot today, that we need more multi-stakeholder, more civil society organization participation. I think the arts is an amazing, effective way of doing so. AI Impact Alliance is an inaugural member of UNESCO's global CSO and academic network on AI ethics and policy. So I invite our listeners to go look at that network if they're interested in joining that network. The applications are reopening. The kind of work that we've done is includes research data governance for AI systems in both art, from fisheries and online violence detection, and more. What I want to do today is ask a question to our speakers, and hopefully we have time to engage on this. I know we touched on some of the elements, but my question is, as we are integrating chatbots and generative AI across civilian and military applications, I mean, I think we understand when we're saying adopting AI, we often mean that we're either adopting ChatGPT or DeepSeek or another model. So that's what I'm saying here. When we're integrating those generative AI models across both our uses and military applications, are we witnessing an inevitable arms race between tech giants controlled to deploy these systems? I think I heard the speaker saying yes. The data we input into these tools, our conversations, the data, the images, any kind of information that we're putting into those systems when we're asking our questions to be able to generate texts and images and videos, are used to train dual use AI, including autonomous weapons and influence operations. How can we reconcile this reality with the principles of real data sovereignty? That is a concept that was developed and promoted a lot by Indigenous communities in Canada. So I think it's very important to maybe make a difference between Sam Altman using it to sell his tools and actual real concept information that lies behind data sovereignty. And then the protection of digital commons of knowledge and culture of heritage. Art is being used to train military AI systems, and it's being commoditized and privatized. How can we protect the digital commons of knowledge, culture, and heritage? What kind of frameworks do we need? And I heard, diplomacy and regulation, but how do we actually really arrive at a global consensus? I believe it's with increased civil society participation. How do we support civil society organizations concretely when funding is being cut by the Trump government? Yes, thank you. I'm all done.
Thank you, Valentin. Cool. So just to quickly sum up here, based on what our discussions have talked about, I'd like to pose a question first to Dr. Liss and secondly to Edward. Right. So for Dr. Liss, so we've heard from Robert with regards to AI in the developing economy. Right. Europe has been one of the prime movers in terms of regulations and so on. What do you say would be Europe's role in giving a leg up to Africa and Latin America on these structural enablers, such as, say, governance policy design, or even more physical items such as compute powers? If you could just share some examples, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I think there is quite a bit of talk, Europe being the Silicon Valley of regulation and all these things. And I guess there is also quite a bit of truth to it. But perhaps what I would maybe like to just highlight from my side is that European Union is consisting currently of 27 member states. And and they are usually depicted as very similar. I come from Estonia, and I can guarantee you we are not that similar. So I think the value of actually having these regulations is that there have been 27 member states, some more similar, some less, who have really debated over these issues very substantively and have also put these things in place. Of course, there are some things that have been in place for a longer time, for example, interoperability frameworks, identity frameworks, also privacy. We all know the famous GDPR. Some of these are newer. We do not yet know the impacts or implications, such as the AI Act, for example, but not only, because it's really an ecosystem. So I think what is the value here for other countries who are also dealing with similar issues, like, for example, the previous speakers also highlighted, the disinformation, misinformation, all the influencing campaigns. How do we as societies deal with these issues? And yes, we may be different, we may be similar, but we can look at the examples of other countries and other regions, and we may take some of it. We do not absolutely need to copy, and often we cannot copy. But it is, I would say, simply a guidance or one way of doing things. There are big countries, big societies that will always have their way of regulating or not. But there are so many of us who might find it helpful. So maybe I will just end here saying that I come also from a small country, and many of these issues that we have been, let's say, dealing with at the EU level would be very difficult to handle at a national level, simply because we have no information enough about these issues at stake, about these issues that we know we need to regulate, we know we need to step in. I think we can all agree we were quite missing out the social media and the social platforms, and then we suddenly realized, oh, it's polarizing and it's doing so many other bad things. But do we actually know exactly what is behind this surface and how to regulate? But I know I have 15 seconds, so I will just mention that there was also there was a mentioning of global regulations and global frameworks, and I agree that we would need some global principles. But having been very actively participating, for example, in the Global Digital Compact that was passed last year, unfortunately, I can say that our world is very polarized, and in many very critical issues, we did not come to an agreement.
All right. So thank you, Douglas. So in other words, for Africa, for Latin America, AI is the great equalizer. Even the more developed markets may not have everything figured out just yet. So in other words, the lesson here is to really have things localized. Use it as a guide, but it may not have to be the exact model that you follow. So, the second question that I want to pose would be to Edward, right? So you've been dealing a lot with AI safety. We've had a long time talking about how chatbots and Gen AI models, how sovereign data, people's data are being used for dual use models, especially in military purpose. What is it that can be done to actually protect the digital commons, and especially how do you ensure that private citizens' data are not being used for purposes which are not meant to be? Edward.
Yeah, I think this is a very big question. I mean, data privacy is a part of the concern. And when we engage with different governments, so for example, with the UK government, GCHQ actually see that AI-powered cybersecurity, especially on critical national infrastructure, is a major risk. The hypothesis is being that, I mean, with some of these latest AI too, they can basically lower the barrier in terms of initiating these kind of attack. And also as, for example, as public sector integrate more and more of these kind of AI solution into multiple services, that also enhance or increase the attack surface area for these kind of services as well. When we conducted training in Indonesia, the Ministry of Digital and Communication, they have also shared great concern, especially around this area, given that even last year, Indonesia has suffered a massive cyber attack affecting over, I think, 240 government departments in Indonesia. And then if we go kind of zoom in a little bit, focusing on military, as mentioned some of the speakers previously. We also seeing quite a lot of concerning side. I mean, in the States, you're seeing companies like Palantir or Andro rushing to deploy AI into their weapon system. We are also involved in some of the tractor dialogue between US and China, led by some of the leading think tanks by both country. I think there are still quite a lot of ambiguity in terms of what kind of red line both countries want to establish, which is very crucial. I mean, having global dialogue is very important, but then ultimately, US and China are the two most important major powers right now, and it's super important to have that kind of bilateral red line to be established. And even with some of these smaller components, like for example, in terms of AI military, what does it mean to have human in the loop? That needs to be a lot of more granularity and details to establish that mutual understanding. And the last point is that in the military setting, there's also governments and also companies that are quite concerned in terms of the intersection between AI safety and CBRN, so the chemical, biological, radioactive, and nuclear security concern. In the sense that how can potentially some of these AI solutions play a role in terms of lowering the barrier in terms of conducting these kind of attack, and how does that look like? And then the last point is when we talk about global conversation, global regulation, I think it's very important to strengthen the multilateral system, which is very much under attack by different angles right now. And I'm really glad to see Estonia will be leading the upcoming global dialogue initiated by the General Assembly as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Edward. Now, we'd also like to move over to countries within, or the larger countries within the global south, which are Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. So for this next round here, I'd like to invite in sequence Sirat Khan from Pakistan, Sidhu Gupta from India, and Nazam Laila from Bangladesh to also give your point of view. So the floor is yours, Sirat.
Thank you. I've been hearing the conversation a lot. My name is Sirat Khan. I'm from Digital Rights Foundation and I work as the research and grants lead. And I just wanted to add my 2 cents to it because I don't think I have too much time. But AI governance in itself, I think right now the conversations happening around it are quite one-sided in my opinion, because what is happening in South Asia and particularly what's been happening with the recent conflicts that have been going on between South Asian countries, we've seen a very major shift of how this AI revolution is shaping disinformation, how it is being used by states, and how it is increasing technology facilitated gender-based violence against women. This concept of AI slop increasing online and how that's affecting a lot of communities is something that I feel like a lot of people don't discuss. And we've seen the repercussions on the first hand, like from the first hand ourselves, when we've seen that during the India and Pakistan conflict recently, we saw a lot of disinformation that was fueled by platforms, and platforms were also monetizing some of this content and sharing it online. And particularly, what was concerning was that disinformation was not coming from users only who were using AI tools to make these generative AI visuals. This was also coming from the states, and it was targeting marginalized communities, particularly women and the LGBTQI community from both sides of the border. And we released 2 reports around this as well, that technology facilitated gender-based violence has increased twofolds with the use of AI tools at this time. So I feel like the conversation now also needs to focus on harms, not just the governance structure of what's been happening. And we also need to hold tech platforms accountable. They are in the race of introducing AI tools like bots, like other even making their algorithms and their algorithms in a manner in which AI tools are being used. But how are they actually increasing and exacerbating violence in a country like Pakistan, for instance, is something that we're seeing on the real grounds. And it's getting very scary at the moment because now we're seeing that these AI harms are not only increasing, and there's no global governance structure that's addressing this, and even local governance structures are inadequate when they're addressing the kind of problems that have been happening. We know what fact checking how fact checking is being used by organizations, and how there needs to be more conversation around this.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. You hit the nail on the point with regards to safety for AI-based content. I'd like to now invite Siddhi Gupta to also share her point of view on this topic.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all the organizers for having me here to listen to this very insightful conversation. I'm Siddhi and I'm representing the Inclusive AI Lab today, and I'll briefly introduce the lab before I ask my question that I have for all the panelists. At the lab, we are really looking at breaking the binaries, and I think some of our speakers have already mentioned that AI is not just technological, but it's also social. So how do you look at both of these sides? It's not just something owned by the North and then used in the South. I think the granularity and the tension exists between both sides of the world. I think we're also looking at how do you break the academic, civic, and business silo, where all of these partners need to come together and speak to each other. And lastly, we're also looking at not just decision making, but also going into the field, understanding use cases, and then saying what does business feel about this, and then what does the governance feel about this. And I think some of the ways in which we are trying to tackle this is by looking at existing instruments. For instance, Creative Commons. But what does this mean today when we're looking at AI, when we're looking at all of these three sectors, and what does it mean for them? I think secondly, we're also looking at individuals and holding dialogue and summits and workshops so that we can understand holistically what does it mean for a business that's looking at representation. What is it looking what does it mean for a business that's especially looking at creativity? What does it mean for a business or a government that may be especially looking at a particular use case? So what happens is when you work with individuals, you can understand the whole system, their motivations, their aspirations, and then perhaps understand what is the solution that we need or what is the conversation that we need to have. And lastly, I think we're advocating for diversity. And I'm talking from India, which is possibly one of the most, I think the largest country with the most diversity. And I think that's the question I have for our speakers, is we're looking at governance and we're looking at decision making. And I know Nelly mentioned that even though we may be looking at 23 countries and we may look similar, but we're not that similar. So what are some methodologies, what are some systems, what are some institutions that our participants and speakers are looking at to ensure that they can actually understand what these differences are and how can we respond to it? Because I feel we have realized that it's not an issue. I don't think diversity is a problem. We need to look at it as an opportunity. We need to see what can we do, how can we work with these differences, but we need to acknowledge it first. We need to acknowledge that we are different. These are the ways in which we are different, and then get into a dialogue. So yeah, that's my question for the speakers to respond to, and perhaps share their insights on is that how are they looking at diversity, which is not perhaps only demographical or cultural, but also education level or access or use. So yeah, how are we tackling this?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Siddhi. Diversity is indeed an opportunity and not an obstruction here. And we'll very much hear from our speakers later on here as well. So now I'd like to invite over Dr. Laila to also share her point of view for AI, especially in the Bangladesh context.
Thank you very much, FPCI and Global Town Hall, for having me here. The conversation has been brilliant. So these are some of the key themes which is constantly coming up whenever we are talking about AI governance, especially from an LDC country perspective. And just to pick on the term itself, like I'm not very fond of the term global north and global south, because what Dr. Leos said at the beginning of the conversation, that we are actually against the big tech companies, but the tech companies are not also working in isolation. Geopolitical factors matter a lot. So for example, I'm currently working as an AI policy advisor for the Bangladesh government, and we are trying to find out a way for regional collaboration when it comes to AI governance. But it has been quite difficult because of the existing geopolitical tension between India and Pakistan. We already have an organization called SARC, but that has been dormant for a while because of this. So my question for the panelists would be, how can we work together despite having regional tensions like this when it comes to AI governance, because it's impossible for one country to tackle AI as we have already agreed. And the second thing is I am also working on a digital platform economy. So gig economy of Bangladesh is one of the key concerns of my research. So I have seen that when the ICT development discourse appears, a lot of tech companies sell this narrative to the world that they are helping these countries, LDC countries, by integrating the workers from these countries to the international labor market through internet connection and all that. But my research shows that most of the time these workers are exploited because they are overworked and underpaid. And this conversation does not come to the place. And whenever we talk about governance and policy, I feel like we're focusing too much on the global elites, like the civil society, academics, and policymakers, a lot of people who are, of course, important. But to make governance really inclusive, how can we also include the people at the bottom? Like, is it really possible to take a bottom-up approach to AI governance when we discuss these topics? So these are my 2 points regarding AI governance. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Laila. So in terms of topics for AI governance, I'd like to actually pose this question over to Dr. Zaini. If you could just address some of Dr. Laila's concern about how workers, especially say with the gig economy, the gig economy style type of work, get absorbed into this global AI ecosystem that they almost become slaves to AI, if I would use that term. Dr. Altazadeh?
Thank you so much, Andre, for the question and for the discussants. I think you are actually providing a very valuable tension of the conversation here, where we see how dual use structures of all those AI systems are building fractions in the world. But let's hope that it would be positive fraction rather than negative frictions. Because what we see today is like we're living in a world where you could use AI as a way to maybe enslave a large population, or maybe empower those kind of AI nations. And this is, to me, that's the solution that we're putting on the map here, making sure that the conversation of sovereign AI does not go in silos from the conversation of regional collaboration or the conversation of a global collaboration, because we cannot just build for assimilated system. The one system governance structure that exists around the world cannot be the de facto instrument of applying governance, because then we can ignore the people at the bottom, as the last discussant had just said here. When you're building for governance structures that can withstand regional tensions and build for a fair communities and societies and economies, and as well protect workers from exploitations by the larger players in the market, then we're talking about collaboration beyond politics and building for this economic interoperability. And to me, the roadmap on the ground for this is to make sure that it's not just a governance conversation. Because if I will build a standard and governance narrative without actually having a tool for building a new gig economy or for building these kind of new structures, or imposing the responsibility of building this kind of infrastructure by the bigger players on the regional kind of hubs, then I will not have a proper verified task driven roadmap where we will establish inclusive governance across the map. So for us, it means establishing different types of labs and collaboration. And I would tie it to the question that asked around the playbook of how we can build this collaboration, the previous question. And to me, it's quite really important to build these kind of dual tier design structures where you are bringing engineers and bringing creative leads and bringing as well intelligence, PNL, from different communities and societies of global south to build solutions from global south for global south and for the world as well, and start seeing these kind of new I would say decisions and mission labs around building these prototypes and IP structures. And as well, when it comes about to monetization structure, I think we should build in metrics within the industry conglomerates that exist today to diffuse indices of disparity. I mean, time to remediate harm is supposed to be part of the intricate kind of currency that exists within those tools. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hoda. I appreciate your thoughts and learnings from the UAE application, especially to the entire South Asia subcontinent. Now, I'd like to also introduce a guest who just joined us, Mr. David Tuan, who is also the CFO of iFly Tech. Welcome, David. So let's get into it. We'd like to know how are... Yes, you can hear you fine. Thank you. Yes. So my question to you, David, how are geopolitical rivalries, especially the US and China tech competition that's going on right now, how's it shaping access for the rest of the world?
From the main perspective of market economy, many people believe that competition is better to increase the development of the whole society. So we don't think the competition between China and the USA is a bad thing. But we understand the other countries, they need to find the good partners to make the development of their own AI industry. For example, in this July in Shanghai, during the global conference of artificial intelligence, we organized a conference for the discussion for the other multiple language large language model. Nearly 30 countries, the experts from nearly 30 countries joined the discussion. And they have the common, common reach, because those countries are from the diversity of the world, Europe, Asia, Africa. Each country has their own unique language. We know that in current stage for large language model, the Chinese version and the English version is no better than the other language version. But large language model is like infrastructure for the whole society, the whole nation to come into the intelligence time. So we cannot image like the friend online for Pakistan. The people in Pakistan use the English large language model or Chinese large language model to set up the other important applications in different industries. They must need their mother language to set up their own language. So for Chinese players, we like to offer our resources to have the friends from our friendly countries, especially from the global south, to have them to set up their own language model. I think it's not it's a good thing to the rest of the world. They can choice. Choice is they have choice is more better than they don't have choice. So we like offer the second choice to the world.
Thank you, David. I really like the collaborative approach that China is taking in terms of AI partnerships all across the world right now, especially on the developing countries. Would you be able to share some examples about partnerships that either China or say iFly Tech that has what the sort of collaborations that you have with these other countries? How do you best support AI across different industries there outside of China?
Okay, I'd like to make an example. In 2023, we are the donator for AI technology to the World Athletic Championship hosted by Budapest, the capital city of Hungary. We donated the system, the software and the hardwares to support the barrier-free communication among the athletics coming from the different countries, and also help them to make the better understanding for the local culture. We know that Hungary is a very unique country. The population in Hungary is around 10 million, but they have very long history. and very unique culture. So we opened this opportunity and invite several companies to join us. Mainly those companies, their technology is focused on certain language technologies. They are from Europe, from Asia, from Africa. The interesting thing is, an actual example. The British company, the CEO of British company, he talked with me. He said, Mr. Duan, he asked me, we can offer not only the best English technology, we can also offer the best French language technology, because our French technology is also the number one in the world. The same comments from the French company, the CEO, another company, he told me, Mr. Duan, we can offer not only the best French language technology, we can also offer the best English language technology. So I told them separately. I said that for the technology of English or French, from Canada, we are also good. We cannot say we are number one in the world, but we are also good. But why we invite every company only provide their mother language? Because from our perspective, the mother language for scientists, they are not learning from data, from big data. They are learning from their mothers, from our mothers. There is not only the technology, there is some deep emotional connections between the people and the technology. So did you understand? So we have a very good cooperation model at that time, and then also continue the cooperation from that time. So this is a small example. We like to show our open attitude, and also in Chinese, 1,000 years before, the famous educator Confucius, he said, in Chinese we said 和而不同. If we translate into English, that means friends should be harmonious but different. We like this in our heart. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Perfect. Thank you, David. Again, I do salute the collaborative approach that China, as well as your organization, are taking across countries like Europe, say in the UK and France, so on, really adopting that new language model. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our panel here today. I'd like to thank again our speakers, Dr. Les, Dr. Hoda, Edward, and David, for sharing their views on how is it that we're able to make AI much more inclusive for everyone. It's not a battle of the global north or the global south, but it's more about a battle of those with resources and those who don't, and how is it that both sides are able to collaborate with one another, not just in terms of AI policy design, but also in terms of more of the infrastructural reforms, or even say the technological capabilities that has been shared by David at the end just now. So thank you once again to all of our panelists, and thank you also to the discussants who have shared their very inspiring point of view. My name is Andre, and I'd like to pass it back to the moderator.
Thank you, Andre, for moderating the session. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Global Town Hall session on how to make the AI revolution work for all, a North-South debate. Coming up next is our climate-focused session titled Winning Humanity's Greatest Battle, Building a Strategic North-South East-West Grand Alliance for the Climate Future We Need. The session will begin in a few short minutes. Please stay tuned.